Hello and welcome to Assemblies of the World with me, Anna Isabel. And I am very privileged, I think, because my guest today does something I think incredibly unique. Her name is Liz Costa, and she has tremendous experience in dealing with the Earth's energies. Hello, Liz.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's a joy to have you. It is this on this channel, we talk a lot about kind of mundane affairs. So this is a treat because it's very different. And I think you're going to have to be the one to explain what it is that you do.
Okay. I guess it's probably best for me to start from the beginning to just give a little bit. I won't give too much detail, but at least some understanding of how I came to even have the impetus to do what I've been doing. So when I was 13, I had a near-death experience and I was unconscious for 9 hours. And and I was not dead for 9 hours. Obviously, my body would not have survived that. But I was dead for legally dead or clinically dead, as they say, for 6 minutes. But then I didn't regain consciousness for almost a 9 hours further than that. And during that period of time, I had a very extraordinary, other dimensional experience that I didn't understand because I was a child and I was also I would call myself a very immature child. I was still, even at 13, playing with dolls. And, I just wasn't a worldly kind of a kid. So I had no idea what any of this was about. And I was basically given the entire history of the earth, not only past history, but future history. So I knew exactly where I was from, my own memories, which are normally wiped before you can come into incarnation here. They were restored. So I understood who I was in this very long earth journey that we have been on as humans. And I was also given the privilege of knowing the future. In other words, I was just shown what we're living through now. So I was given the lead up to that. In other words, the history of the planet, and then what was going to occur as we move beyond this current experience. So I then wake up from this as a kid, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? I start talking to the nurses in the hospital, and I'm talking to my mother, and they all think she's delirious. She's lost so much blood. Well, it's all that. So I believe that, but then shortly after, I cannot stop thinking about all of these details. So from the time I was 13 until I was in my early 30s, I was studying, and I was studying history, and I was looking at prophecy, and I was looking at all kinds of different traditions and cultures and religions, because I just couldn't, I had to validate everything that I kind of already knew, and which I did religiously. I also became a pharmacist. I also had a family. I had a normal life, but I was this whole other individual. And so in my early 30s, when I was 33, actually, I had an experience when I was traveling where the earth just literally opened up communication with me. It just happened. I didn't go for it. I didn't try to make it happen. It just happened. And it was from the beginning, I knew that this was real. I wasn't making it up. And I, in that moment, had something I needed to do in the spot I was standing. And it was so real that I thought, well, something just happened, because this energy was really, really moving through my body, and I was shaking like an epileptic. And I'd never had anything like that before. And from then on, I would have these knowings that would just come in. I needed to go to this place or that place. Sometimes I would know why. Sometimes I would be given some guidance things would come into my inbox, or somebody would say something to me. I think many of us know how synchronicity works, that this is what would happen, and I'd get some validation about going to this particular place. I would get some background sometimes about what may have occurred, because a lot of the work I did early on was to clear Black magic rituals and things that had occurred in different parts of the world that were mucking up the way that humans can tap into these fields. Because in the absence of a clear energy lines, we are highly affected by that. Our whole evolution is affected by that. And so what we're going through now is that the planet herself is actually changing. The energy lines, the grid lines, everything is going through a complete upheaval. And so her physical body is changing because this is a dimensional shift. So she's moving out of this very heavy third dimensional frequency into something higher, as we will be doing as well. And our bodies have to change in order for us to be able to do the same. And the earth has to do it first, and then we follow.
Okay, I think that's going to need some explanation
Okay.
because it's very difficult to conceive what you're talking about. So, if I understand, what you're saying is that the Earth's energy is changing. So, can you describe for us how it's been laid out, how it's worked up until now, and what the nature of the changes are?
I can do my best, because I'm definitely not a psychic. I know what's happening currently, but I don't know the full end product of how it's going to be for anybody. So I can only share with you what I know. And how it's been is that we have a grid system on the planet where we have nodes that actually cross, and we have these lines that cross each other. And on these nodes, we will often find churches, cathedrals, temples, wells, places of worship, and where rituals would have been done, stone circles. These are things that are found all over the world. There are pyramids on every single continent on this planet, and every one of them sits on a major ley line node. So this is a worldwide electromagnetic system that pulls from cosmic energy, and also is holding the Earth's energy itself, is running through. So it is how humans, it's almost like we kind of plug in to this system, and that gives us the information that we need in order to function here. And that can be messed up. It can be messed up purposefully with ritual and different things that people can do, and then it affects everybody that comes in contact with that line, which is a lot. And it can also be battles, wars, things like that. They really create a discord in the lines, and so they can sometimes we just need to kind of straighten them out, because they've been distorted by some kind of trauma that's occurred there. So it's all kinds of different things that have been worked with and cleared, and sometimes you have to think of it like a person who's been through trauma. There are times when there's nothing you can do to take it away, but what you can do is you can be with them, and you can listen, and they can be heard, and that can often be an extremely healing experience, even if the trauma itself is not fully removed from the nervous system. So that's how it is with the planet as well. And I know that I'm not the only one who has done this. I have done it for 30 years, like I said, and it's changed over the years. And I think that I'm not even sure, quite frankly, if by the end of this year, I will even do it anymore, because that's how much the grids have changed over the years. So right now, I don't want to get too much into how it's changing, because we have there's a masculine feminine balance that we are out of balance at the moment. And ironically, it's the feminine energy that is cleanly here and in the new grid that is being created. The divine masculine, however, is not. And without that being actually fully in the grid and the new grid working in balance, how it will, and it will do this, we still won't have the Earth's support in creating the structures of the new way of being. It will be a lot of trying and a lot of good people working, and which, as we know from community assembly, there are a lot of good people who are working on these systems that are collapsing and trying to create these new ones. And all of this work is worthwhile. It's the only work that is worthwhile, in my opinion, because this is, if we don't create something, then what are we going to have? It's the other things collapsing. So what's the choice? We have to create something else, but we won't have very much support for those structures to be really strong and really ready to carry lots and lots and lots of people on them until this divine masculine really, really gets into this grid. And I don't know when that's going to happen. My guess is that it's not going to be more than 2 years from now. So this is our prep time. This is our time to find our communities, to move through our own patterns of stuff and let some of these things go that we have from our old life and our old system, the anger and the injustice and all of those things that are very real and understandable, don't get me wrong. And hanging on to them just keeps this process going longer than it needs to. So we do need to do some inner work on that and make sure that we're clearing as much as we can so that we can help the process. So when that divine masculine drops and really marries that divine feminine and we have that true balance, then we're off, right? We've done all the prep work, we've done all the groundwork, and now everything can get built. So that's where we are.
Interesting that you're talking about it in these terms and that you're saying that there's an imbalance because we're at the moment we're missing the divine masculine, and so many thoughts come into mind, and it's primarily the the first one that came to my mind was that in some way this is mirroring the kind of mad energy that we're seeing manifesting through what people are doing, because there's all this talk about toxic masculinity, and there's a real kind of denigration of both masculine and feminine going on, because on the one hand we have the biological nature of woman being literally attempts being made to erase it from language, and on the other hand men are being told that they're toxic. So this is a very disturbing way of looking at masculine and feminine energy. So we have that going on. Then we have something else going on. We have this notion that feminine is everything. So this idealization of the feminine, because masculine is bad, it's toxic. So we have this idealization of the feminine. Could it be that this imbalance itself is being reflected by the Earth's energy, so that we need to value yang energy as much as yin and not see it as being toxic and horrible? Because actually, the energy that a woman needs just to give birth, I feel, is very yang energy, which is pushing. It's pushing. So yes, we need yin energy for nurturing, for compassion, for understanding, and so many things. But we need that yang energy for the dynamic action that's required just to give birth. So what do you feel?
Well, I agree with you. Both individually, we need a balance of these two energies, and and externally, that is going to express. You have to remember that there is a faction on this planet knows very well the cosmic cycle that we're in and exactly what's happening energetically on the planet, and is just for fun doing whatever they can to bring as much chaos and as much inversion, and that's really the word that I think needs to be remembered, is that what we see in the outside world is a complete 180 to what actually is going on. So we've had 12,000 years of this patriarchy. It was not originally set up as abusive in any way. It became that way without any doubt, but it wasn't set up. The initial experiment was not set up that way. And it is a completely failed experiment because you cannot have anyone in duality be above someone else, because then there's no way that what used to be this and then it goes to this, and then sooner or later there's just no connection whatsoever. And that's where we are. And just as additionally, we have forgotten our own biology, and that we are biological creatures in a dualistic situation. We have two genders, and those genders are different and their roles are different. And this idea of everyone is exactly the same and has the same roles. This isn't about being smart or not. This is about biology. And this is what has been completely taken out of the conversation, is that.
Equality does not mean being the same.
Right.
In fact, it's to really to have an equality that's meaningful. It's about equal respect
Yes.
for two very different things. So I just want to come back to the ley lines. And you talked about some of them being masculine and some of them being feminine. And so before the changes, how did it work? How would you even begin to sense them? How do we detect them?
Well, there are dowsers all over the world who have very different ways of doing it. My body happens to be my instrument, so I can feel where I need to go. So I've often been sent to very weird and very, places that are not on maps. Like I literally have to use my own compass in order to even find. I have almost died on several occasions because some of the locations are so inaccessible and so dangerous, but I can't not go to the exact spot that I need to go to, regardless of what that is. And I have dragged my husband on some of these, and let me tell you, he has many times tried to talk me out of what I'm attempting to do, but it's never worked, because when I'm driving an impetus from the planet, I have her whole energy behind me, and there is no saying no. It just not that I would, but I actually couldn't anyway. And I always have all the support somehow, some way. I have had times when I was stranded in the middle of nowhere and had, my car break down or whatever, and I don't think I'm going to see a soul for weeks, and suddenly somebody will ride by on a bike, and like I probably should write a book someday about some of the unbelievable things that have occurred out that you just couldn't. But I think it's just because in this one context in my life, I can't say I do it everywhere, but in this one context, I have such complete trust in this process, and it has never let me down, not once. So it is really, really fascinating. And as far as the male and female goes, I can just feel it. There's a Michael and a Mary line that run through the UK, as you know, and in Cornwall especially, because that's where they both come on to UK soil. And so I have spent quite a bit of time in Cornwall with those because it's very important there that so the ocean cleans them. So anything that has occurred and on them somewhere else on the planet gets cleared as soon as it moves underwater. So it's just this amazing process, but then it comes on land, and that's when man gets involved. And so there have been some things that muck it up. And since it's expanding out now, so that it will at a peak time, which according to Rory Duff, because I don't know if you know him, but he is a phenomenal dowser. He does very different work than me. His work, from my perspective, is very masculine and needed, and he's an engineer, and that's how his mind works, and mine is extremely feminine and completely intuitive. So to me, there's no problem there. They're just different ways, but there's loads of people on the planet who do dowsing in many, many different ways, using, whether they use rods or they use pendulums or whatever the case may be. I was in Morocco once, doing some work in the Atlas Mountains. And I decided one day that I wanted to go on a balloon ride. And it had nothing to do with the earthwork I was there for. I just wanted to go on this balloon ride. So I set it up. And when I got there, they said, well, where's your partner? Everybody always comes with somebody. And I'm like, well, I'm alone. I didn't come with anybody. And they were like, wow, what are we going to do now? Because now the whole weight of the balloon is up, can't work, because we have to have exactly the right number of people. And, I'm standing there like an idiot going, well, I can't, what can I tell you? I only paid for one person. You should have known I was coming alone. Anyway, the guy turns around, and just standing there watching the balloon is this old Berber farmer guy. He doesn't even, he just speaks Arabic and his own language. So anyway, the guy says to him, you want to go for a ride? Because we need a body. So anyway, he gets in. This guy was so excited. He comes out to see the balloons, but he never thought in his life he would ever be able to get in one. He was like a little kid. It was so much fun. I didn't understand a word he was saying, but just watching him, his energy was extraordinary. It was worth all the price of admission. But afterwards, we all went to have tea in this Berber tent thing that they had. And they sat him next to me. And of course, I can't communicate with this man. I don't speak his language, he doesn't speak mine. So we were just kind of like chatting, not talking, because we couldn't. And then something happened. And suddenly I could understand every single word he was saying. He didn't change his language, nor did I. But we lifted into some other space, and I understood exactly what he was saying. And he was saying to me, I am a dowser. I'd really like to show you how I find water for my village. And I was like, that would be, now how he knew I did what I did. He how could he? We didn't speak. So anyway, he goes running out of the tent. He goes back to his house. He gets his special, this special kind of tree that they use to make this V-shaped dowsing rod. And he brings that back, and he takes me outside, and he shows me exactly how he does it. And he finds the water, and he hands it to me. I've never even touched something like this. And I start going around thinking, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And the thing just spins and bops me right in the face. I mean, I ended up getting a whole black and blue right in my third eye here. And I was like, whoa, really shocked. And he just looked at me. He fell on his knees, and he handed me this, which he'd been given by his grandfather, passed down to his father, given to him. That's how important this dowsing stick was. And he gave it to me, and he said, you have to take this belongs to you, and to this day I have it wrapped like a treasure in my closet, because it was such a huge day for me of validation, which I won't say I needed a lot of, because I just trusted this process. But it's also very nice when it occurs that this is gratitude from the planet. This is simplicity in its most beautiful form. of, thank you for doing what you do. Because obviously I don't get paid for this. I'm not public. This is my love. This is my heart. And this is my service to this beautiful planet and to the uncontaminated human that belongs on it. So, that this has been the best experience I could have ever had as a person.
That is the most stunning, stunning story. I wonder whether you should be using that rod, given that it was given to you.
I have thought about that, but it's just one of those things I can't get past the sacredness and the preciousness of it, that to just bring it with me on a trip and put it in, and just because it's just wood. It could snap so easily. And it's a very interesting way that you use it, because you have to it's almost like you wind it up with your hand so that it's like ready to pop. And then so it's really got to be really strong. And it's just one of those things that is like, what an amazing thing these indigenous people who know how to work with the planet. They listen, they understand who we are and how much the planet is our, without it. And we can't survive. There is no us without it.
You mentioned the Michael and Mary line, and although I know what you're talking about and you know what you're talking about, many people will not. So can you please explain?
So there is a very long line, energy line. When I say that, I mean actually that there is a current of energy that runs in a linear pattern. So maybe that will help people to understand. It's just an energy line. There's loads of different kinds of energy lines. Some of them are very stressful for humans. Some of them are very healing for humans. Sometimes people live somewhere and they have what they call geopathic stress underneath their home. And as a result, they could have illnesses. And there are lots of people who clear these things and work with these energies. You can use wooden spikes as acupuncture needles to release energy. That is, and I have of course done that when it's been called for. There's loads of different ways that people do this and work with the energies. But so you've got this Michael line and you've got a Mary line that cross in a lot of places. And in those places almost always will have some kind of a monument or a cathedral or some kind of a temple or something, because they were very well known in the past, and people used that energy. They were able to draw from it and actually use it.
Is there a difference in the way that there must be? Because if you're talking about one being masculine, the other one feminine, I imagine one's positive, one's negative. Um,
Only from an electrical standpoint, not from good or bad, but from an
yes,
electrical
exactly. That's
standpoint.
what I was talking about in terms of the charge. So how do we experience them if we're on those lines? What does it feel like to be on a Mary line or to be on a Michael line? What's the difference?
Well, I think that would be really personal to people. So it's really hard to say. Some people don't feel anything at all, but they start having memories of different things that is an indicator that something has been opened up in them, that the energy is able to move through their system and shake something loose out of the subconscious. So sometimes people have been on a line, whether knowingly or unknowingly, because they went on a hike or something and they came across something, and then have very vivid dreams for several nights after that, because there's something that they need to release from their system that was brought up by being on that particular frequency. Even the Mary line is not fully feminine, and the masculine line is not fully masculine. Nothing on this planet is like that. So you will connect with it in some way, regardless of what gender your body is. It isn't that women are going to do better on the Mary line. It's not really like that. It hasn't been my experience that it's like that, because I can only speak from my experience with all of this. Did
So
that
we
answer?
have,
Did that
sorry,
answer you?
it does. So of course, I've another one. So we've got the Michael and Mary line, and you talked that you said that there were many different types of lines. Tell us about the other lines, because I'm assuming that these are two main energy currents that are going through. And actually, before I we get to the different types of energy lines, you mentioned that they go through Cornwall. Is that the only part of the country? And how wide a distance would they cover? Because Cornwall is quite a small area. Does that mean that the whole of Cornwall is bathed in this energy?
Oh, good question. No, it doesn't mean that. However, the lines don't have a fixed width. So they change and they move depending on cosmic cycles. So at times of the solstice or the equinox, they get really, really wide. And then they come back again to be in some areas just a few feet wide, and some areas a little bit more than that. They can be quite wide. It can be a couple of meters or more, but they do expand and contract. This is a breathing process. So it's like your nervous system. Sometimes it's really on fire, and sometimes it's really calm. And so it's the same. And the Michael and Mary line run the whole width of the UK and exit on the other side and go over into Europe that way. So these lines run around the entire world. And so there's many, many, many. There are dragon lines all over the world, which are different. And they are coming very much online now, which a lot of the dragon lines had just almost disappeared for many, many, many centuries. But we have a whole new slew of dragon lines and bigger lines. That's why I say I can't possibly know what the final geometry of this could even begin to look, because I still have a three-dimensional brain. So even though I have traveled to what I would consider different dimensions and seen geometries and colors that don't exist here, I'm not permanently in that space. So I don't have a way of knowing what the final geometry of how the new Earth grid is going to be, and how would it be described. I don't know. All I am part of is what I'm currently seeing is this process of the whole linear nature of this grid. And there are, like I said, there are many different lines, and they're called all kinds of things. But it doesn't matter, because people call them things in one country and then they call them something else in another country. So labels are just not something I work particularly well with, which is why I don't even know how to label myself. I'm just somebody that works with earth energies, but I don't have any kind of title or anything like that. At least I never got one from anywhere. And I didn't think it was worthwhile making one up. So this thing that's happening on the planet, where the linear nature of the grid is shifting, there will be a period of time when the whole planet is just in a singularity, where there will be no spaces and everything will be unified energetically. When that's going to be, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really prognosticate, but it will be in the next 10 years for sure. I mean, I can't imagine how it would be any longer than that, and probably much less. So that what happens after, what it does when it moves from that, this is also connected to time. So time is already feels very different for those of us very sensitive. You can tell that the time is different. But you can see that the linear nature of the grid is changing, and so is the linear nature of time, because time isn't a linear thing. It's just how we've been trained to see it. So that whole thing is changing as well.
I feel it is changing, because although in the normal day-to-day running of things, nothing's changed, what has changed is the way in which the concept of time being a construct is now a topic of conversation where it never used to be.
Yeah.
think that that's very interesting. So it seems that our perception of the reality that makes up the world is changing. Obviously, uh, in terms of mainstream understanding, it hasn't very much. But even in terms of mainstream understanding, there is a lot more talk about certain things that never used to be discussed, like energy and the very concept of karma or reincarnation, etc. That's kind of permeated in um, to mainstream consciousness. So things are changing. Indeed, they are. I want to come back to these energies. How can we tap into them, let's say for healing?
It's really simple. You can look anywhere, that in most places you're going to find either some kind of a standing stone or some kind of, especially in the UK, not, within a reasonable distance from you, you will find something like that. And you can even find them on Google. There are plenty of books that are written about these sacred spots. So sacred sites are all over the world. But, in my opinion, some place in nature that you are drawn to is your sacred space. And if there is water running there, even better. And that is the place where you sit and you take off your shoes and you actually keep your bare feet on the ground and you sit, because it takes time for your system to work with the planet and be able to have that energy actually, because there's such a big differential between where we are in our normal fight and flight that we normally live in this beta state all the time, and the kind of alpha state that nature works in. Those are brainwave states. And so it takes some time for us to kind of be able to be in alignment with those energies and to open ourselves up to it, because no energy at all, any healer whatsoever, a good healer anyway, would say that they're healing you, because they aren't. We only heal ourselves. So what we can do, what a true healer would do, is they are open to the universal life force and they're able to share that. What that person does with that energy, whether they use it for healing or not, is up to them. It's not up to the healer. And so it's the same with the planet. Being able to open up and trust that this is real and this is happening, and that you are worthy of receiving that, and being able to just sit with that and be patient and send some love, like literally feel your heart and send that love down your spine, down your legs, into the planet. You will get a response. And this is how it can be used for healing. It's very personal. And so this is just a guide a little bit to allow yourself, but it always comes down to worth. That tends to be, and I know how much I have fought with that over the years. So I have seen it in so many people that I can't feel anything. I can't feel anything. Nothing's happening. And that may be true, but it's happening whether you're feeling it or not. The only reason it wouldn't is because you, through your demand that you're not worthy of it, you stop it and you say, no, I don't feel it, therefore it isn't there, or it's not for me, or I'm not good enough for this, or whatever else happens with the ego. So it's just relax. It's just relax and open and know that if you were not worthy of earth energy, you would not exist. It's really that simple. You don't have to prove that you're justify your existence, or that you're here.
And sometimes too, or actually often, people expect things to be very dramatic. So
Yeah.
they're not tuning into the subtlety of what's happening. So they say, well, I don't feel anything. But it's not that they don't feel anything, it's that they're not aware, because what they're expecting is different
Yeah.
from what's actually happening. And in my experience, these things are extremely subtle. And they're so subtle, you then begin to question and doubt.
Yes,
And
that's exactly right.
so that's a tricky thing. So we've been talking about the human side of things, but I'm wondering, with this change in the energy of the planet, are animals being affected in any way?
Absolutely. And I would imagine a lot of the animals that we say that I don't remember what the exact number is anymore of endangered species that we lose on a daily basis. We're not losing them. They are choosing to leave because the energies no longer support their own evolution. So they will return in a different evolutionary form in when we have the new Earth grid fully there. So there is going to be die-offs. We're going to see that. It is one of the Hopi prophecies is to watch the dolphins, because when we have a lot of dolphin beachings and a lot of things happening to dolphins, it's a sure sign that we are very close to this shift, because the dolphins and the whales specifically are fifth dimensional beings. They are already functioning at a way different level than us. And they have been here since the beginning, holding those frequencies during this whole cycle that has been very, very low frequency. And they have held those higher frequencies all this time. That's been their job. And I've had a lot of encounters with dolphins, not just in meditation, but physically in the water with them. And so, and they've told me this themselves, that they have only ever been here in service to humans. And we don't understand what service actually means for the most part as humans, because we've lost our oneness. We know how to look after ourselves, but looking after the whole is something that is beyond really what the human generally does. That's changing and will continue to change as we move forward in this process, because as the ley lines become one, so will we, and we won't be able to look at each other as other for too much longer. So I believe, and this is just my opinion, that a lot of the revelations, we are living in the time of revelations. That's not a religious statement. It is the truth. We are living in time when the things that have been going on under the surface are now coming up to be seen and actually integrated and accepted. And we have to take responsibility for all of it. Not from a shame or guilt perspective, but simply because we have participated in those things. And taking that personal sovereign responsibility allows these things to be shown up and then leave. They're not needed anymore. And the more people don't do that and don't take responsibility and don't want responsibility, the longer it stays. So it really is up to humanity how quickly this thing is going to happen. But the earth itself also has her own agenda. So I think we're going to have some activity earth-wise in the next couple of years. I do. I don't know where or how. I don't know any of that stuff, but I can feel it in my workings with her.
Okay. Well, you have given us a lot to think about. Um, and the notion that everything is changing at an energy level, well, we can certainly feel it at a kind of day-to-day level. So perhaps you've given us an interesting glimpse and and some hope as well.
Absolutely. These are very exciting times. It's the most exciting time to be a human. It's difficult and it's not going to be easy what we're going into. People will go, well, I'm so glad the last few years are over. That's only chapter one. So we do need resilience and we need each other. And again, I will say it, community assembly is important, and we need each other. We need to know that we have support when everything, it feels like everything's crumbling, and a lot of things are going to crumble, but it needs to. And what's coming in its place is going to be so extraordinary and knock everybody's socks off, that hopefully that little bit, it is going to be positive. It's just that we have to move through some stuff first, and it's going to be the strong ones that are, still standing.
And by that, I think you mean those who are strong, as in having a centered sense of purpose.
Yes, yes, and feel supported, and have some form of community. It doesn't have to be like, every time I say that, other people say, "What do you mean? We all have to live in a commune?" No, I am not saying that. So I am going to clear that up right now. It's just that sense of feeling like you have people who you can speak to honestly, and can share honestly, and will support each other when they need it. It's simple.
And on that note, I remind and urge everyone who is watching this of the value of the community assemblies, and to please join us if you have not already done so. We are looking for facilitators, and all that facilitators do is exactly in the title, facilitate. All we're needing is people everywhere so that we can have a beautiful network in which we share information that is supportive to everyone around us. It's time. It's time to step up. It's time to do something that is positive, and which is a statement of intention for creating something better than what we are all suffering from. So that's a reminder to everyone. And now, Liz, if people want to find you and learn more about what you do, how do they do that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was afraid you'd ask. My preference is to not have that, because I feel I did do some things that were kind of out in the world, maybe a decade ago, and I found that I it changed the way that I did my work. There was some aspect of it that became, I don't know, like I was trying to prove something, or I saw it in myself, and I thought, this is not clean anymore. I'm not pure anymore. So I had to stop all of that and actually just continue the way that I was. So if somebody has a particular question, I'm more than happy to answer it. But I think it would be best if they contacted you, and then with their information, and then I will contact them. And that way I don't shift my own purity, if that makes sense.
Of course. So if people are interested in this subject, what would you recommend that they do?
So there are loads of books that you can get on dowsing, and on energy lines, dragon lines. These books are amazing. There's a guy called Hamish Miller, who is from Cornwall, actually, and he's got several books that he's written. And if I'm not mistaken, Hamish is the one who originally found the Mount Mary and Michael lines in Cornwall, if I'm not mistaken. But I've read his stuff a long time ago, so I could be. But I would start there. He's got many books on the serpent lines. I mean, it's very, very interesting stuff for people who are interested.
Perfect. And I think you also mentioned Rory Duff, didn't you?
Yes, and Rory Duff's newsletter is like a book in and of itself once a month. He is so generous with the information that he shares with people, and he's brilliant. So I would highly suggest that people get his newsletter. Yeah, you will learn so much.
Perfect. Liz, thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome, Anna.
Been a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.